Are you okay with this? According to this article from IGN by Wesley and Poole, a Ubisoft exec states that, quote, gamers need to get comfortable not owning their games for subscriptions to take off, end quote. At first, when hearing this, I wanted to get outraged like everyone else was. But as I actually read the article, what the exec was saying actually made sense. To be clear, I don't like his statement, but the reality is that we are headed towards that kind of future, whether we like it or not. One of the things the Ubisoft exec says is, quote, one of the things we saw is that gamers are used to, a little bit like DVD, having and owning their games. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They got comfortable not owning their CD collection or DVD collection. That's a transformation that's been a bit slower to happen in games, end quote. While thankfully it has been slower in gaming, he's exactly right when it comes to music and movies. According to this article from CNBC, DVD sales have declined by more than 86% since 2008. Streaming and subscriptions have taken over in music with things like Spotify or Apple Music, with movies with things like Netflix or HBO, and whether we like it or not, video games are soon to be next. Even when it comes to digital versus physical, many people will still purchase digital media out of convenience despite the many benefits that physical has. While we can get angry at the exec for saying this, the reality is we have already let this happen in music and movies, and for the most part, most of us have already accepted it. If things keep progressing how they are, eventually physical media will be done away with and replaced with streaming and subscription service models. With this comes many issues. Firstly, the loss of ownership. And with the loss of ownership comes loss of freedom. When I buy a CD, Blu-ray, or game cartridge, I own it. No one can control how I want to enjoy that media or what I decide to do with it, excluding the outdated laws on DMCA which shouldn't really matter to you anyways. Ignoring those gray areas, with physical media, you can back it up digitally and even stream it yourself, with you still owning your media every step of the way. I can play or stream my music or movies on my PC, Blu-ray player, phone, PS3, etc. With games, I can play them on the original console, with the disc, or even without the disc with the power of Homebrew, or I can play them on emulators. In addition, I can also play ROM hacks as well, and no one can take that away from me. Compare this to the alternative of streaming and subscription service models, where the level of control and ownership that consumers have is basically none. Now, you have to play by the rules of the company. You have to be online and sign into their website or app in order to get access to your content. If your device doesn't support it or can't connect to the internet, that's too bad. Even if you are able to download media, you still have to watch it using their service. Want to share a movie with a friend? Nope, you can't. If a streaming service loses a license or decides to get rid of some content, that's also too bad. If a company wants to force you to watch ads unless you pay for a premium tier, that's also too bad. And there's really nothing you can do about it because guess what? You don't own the content. Secondly, the loss of preservation. When media is unable to be purchased and properly preserved by the community, we risk losing it to history. Companies have already proven themselves to be incapable at preserving media themselves. Hell, sometimes they even do it on purpose. A great example is the shutdown of the Wii U/3DS store, which, according to Video Games Chronicle, removed around 1,000 digital-only games from existence. If it weren't for the efforts of piracy and homebrew, these games would be gone. Even if you dislike piracy, you can't deny that it has been very important towards preserving and keeping media alive. But it shouldn't be necessary, and these kinds of actions are the reason why it is. Another example would be the Panty Raid episode on SpongeBob, which was made unavailable on streaming services for years due to it being deemed inappropriate. Regardless of the reason, that's another example of media that would be gone forever without physical media existing. And again, like I said earlier, there is nothing you can do about it being removed because you don't own it when you use streaming services. Thirdly, is the loss of availability. When something is released physically, you can trust that for the most part it will be available for a long time, even after it is done being officially sold. That's because even after physical media is done being officially sold, the media can still be sold or traded in used or third-party markets. If you decide that you don't want something anymore, you have the option of selling it or giving it to a friend. Now on the other hand, if you want something for a lesser price, you can look in the used market and find great deals. And when all else fails, you can back it up digitally with no DRM to be preserved for future generations. When something is no longer being sold digitally, it's gone. And if it has invasive DRM, there's no way for you to back it up either. In addition, since there's no used market, you end up paying a lot more for older games than you would have to if you went used, as many are still being sold at full price. If you later decide you don't want a game anymore, that's too bad, because outside of the refund period, you are stuck with that game unless you want to delete it and throw away your money. Finally, it's the loss of buyer power. When consumers willingly give up pro-consumer things in exchange for things like convenience, it sends a message to companies that they can get away with anti-consumer behavior. The more control that companies can have and take away from consumers, the better for them. The success of streaming and subscription services in music and movies is the reason that the Ubisoft Exec made his statements in the first place. When we let companies off the hook by using their services despite anti-consumer practices, it gives them more power to find more ways to control their products and take away control that consumers should rightfully have. And as long as there is no change, this is the way things are going to go. So, despite these things, why do people continue to leave physical media in the dust in favor of streaming and subscription services? Well, that's because on the surface, streaming and subscription services seem to be better. They're more convenient, they appear to be a better value, and it's what's mainly being pushed by companies. Furthermore, I don't think a lot of people are actually aware of these problems. They probably just want a quick and easy way to listen to music or watch their favorite movies. I know that the picture I painted looks pretty bleak, but is there any silver lining in any of this? Fortunately, there is. As the Ubisoft Exec stated, gamers seem to be a lot more stubborn with physical media than music listeners and movie watchers. Judging by the response on Twitter, it seems that many people would be against this push. As to whether this opinion is the same from the gaming community as a whole, I don't know, but it is a good sign. Even beyond gaming, there seems to be a push towards physical media overall. Christopher Nolan, who was the filmmaker for Oppenheimer and tons of other movies, recently stated the importance of physical media and the dangers of streaming. If more people like him continue to speak out, then the industry will be pressured to keep physical media alive. There is another silver lining as well, and that is some physical media that is actually proven to be successful in today's market. The first one would be vinyl. According to The Conversation, $1.2 billion worth of vinyl records were purchased in 2022, which represents a 20% jump from 2021. We were even seeing it happen with Blu-rays. Just recently, the 4K Blu-ray for the movie Oppenheimer sold out in 1 week, which will help tremendously to show to studios that physical media is still a viable option. So, what can you do? Well, the most important thing to do is to continue buying physical media, or if you haven't, consider doing it. If consumers start to buy physical media again, it will show to these companies that it is still a viable option and that it wouldn't be in their best interest to get rid of it. Don't settle just for using streaming or subscription services. A great place to start would be buying your favorite movie on Blu-ray or your favorite album on CD. It shouldn't be too expensive, and it can help act as a gateway to buying physical media long term. And if these companies still don't want to keep selling physical media, then don't support them. There are plenty of great games from current gen and previous gens that could satisfy me for a lifetime, and with the help of the emulation community, you can enjoy many of these old games with current graphics, and thanks to the ROM hack and modding communities, you can essentially enjoy extra DLC or even completely different games from the original. The same applies for music and movies. In conclusion, we are lucky that physical media, as of today, is still being sold, and we should take advantage of that, because if things keep trending in the direction that they are, they might eventually go away. However, there is still hope, and as long as we continue to show these companies that physical is still viable, we can keep it alive and help to preserve our favorite forms of media for generations to come. Peace.